We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
The tragic deaths of 8 people and hundreds of injuries at the Astroworld Music Festival shocked the nation. Travis Scott, the performer, has come under the spotlight accused of performing while people were involved in a crush. And the legal consequences, the lawsuits, they have begun. Now, what kind of liability could Mr. Scott face, and does this have broader ramifications for performers in the future? Well, to answer these legal questions, we're joined by constitutional lawyer and host of the excellent Uprising podcast, Mr. Scott D. Cosenza. Thanks for taking the time,
music fan,
Scott.
Mark.
And music fan, a fan of Mr. Scott's?
And concert goer as well, yes.
So, Scott, who's liable in this? What are the actions that provoke liability?
Well, there's a massive amount of attention focused on Travis Scott because he's the most famous or one of the most famous people there. But there is also the venue owner and the promoter of the show is usually how these things work, Mark. So if you or I wanted to rent out a stadium or arena for a venue, it's not like they just say, okay, we'll take the check and they hand over the keys. There's all sorts of liability protections that are required by a venue owner, including not only private security staff, but coordination often with state and municipal authorities for a venue of that size and a crowd that size. Then there's the promoter. Almost all of these events have a promoter who is a local, who operates locally, okay? And they're in charge of actually dealing with the venue itself and selling the tickets and then sort of turning that over to the artists organization, which may be a corporate promoter. We have a lot of, trending now in the United States. I assume internationally this is true, but that instead of artists going on their own tour, that they or their label, their record label would promote, it would be like the LibertyNation.com, rap festival tour 2021. And so featuring, Travis Scott or Drake or such and thus. And so those people may also be liable. And then finally, we have the artists themselves, in this case, Mr. Scott and his potential liability.
Okay, so is it normal that people take legal actions against performers or venues or promoters when people get hurt at concerts? So surely things like crushes in the crowd, these are as old as rock and roll itself.
Well, that's certainly true. However, it is common if the allegations involve liability for the way that the venue was set up or the way that the show was designed, and whether that aided or retarded the damage. And so what we had, Mark, for a long time in the United States was that that sort of the pit, if you call it, at the front of the shows. This is more common in heavy metal type shows. They were done away with because of liability in the courts that was assigned to artists and promoters when they basically said, well, this is sort of how the law works. If you know that there's a high likelihood of a pit developing or a crush developing and you do nothing about it, well, the first time it happens, maybe you're okay in terms of liability, meaning the first time in the country that this happens. But if it happens time after time and you don't do anything about it, well, then you may certainly incur liability. If I was advising somebody who was a concert promoter, I would certainly say you better take steps to manage this because it's a foreseeable problem. We don't have to protect against unforeseeable problems, like if an airplane came in and crashed in the crowd. But for this kind of thing, it is eminently foreseeable, and therefore, I think we're going to see a lot of liability there. If this is like the Full Lawyer Employment Act of 2021, Mark, this incident.
No job left behind. So now that the floodgates have opened on the lawsuits here, will this impact people being willing to put on shows or have their names associated with shows? I mean, artists and performers, they can just ditch the touring and they can make their money from album sales or downloads. So artists, are they going to be willing to put themselves in front of this kind of fire? Now, it's different, of course, for venues and promoters and labels, as you say. But is this going to impact how people access their entertainment?
Well, that is the design of the law. And what I mean by that, Mark, is when these people sue, they'll be suing for compensatory damages, but punitive damages is what they would be hoping to get. Now, punitive damages are damages designed to punish the person for their civil wrongdoing so that others may take heed and not do the same thing. So that's the precise design of the law, right? It's to say, oh, well, if Travis Scott got, had to pay gazillions of dollars, I better not do this if I'm performer X. Okay. And that's my rap name now. So that is by design what should happen. Now, what would happen, I think, in effect, Mark, is what has happened in the past, which is that the concerts are designed to prevent that. So, for instance, in this case, there was a massive crush forward to the stage, as I understand it, to get closer to the stage. So what we have happened in many concerts, and I don't know why it wasn't in place here, is there are robust barriers in place to prevent that from happening. Now, certainly some person with acrobatic skill might be able to scale even the tallest fence, but there are ways to prevent almost every normal sort of person from getting that far forward. And that's what a lot of venues do when they expect this kind of a thing. So it would prevent this kind of crush, because the maximum amount of people couldn't get close to the stage to kind of enact the crush, if you will.
Yeah, there's been actually a lot of experts who are experts in crowd crushes and crowd size management. That these are roles that I wasn't aware specifically existed. Obviously, I was aware that risk management people existed, but crowd crush management experts, and they're saying that literally almost all concerts now have various things that they can be doing better. Now, are these experts who really nobody had really heard of beforehand, are they about to become the blazing faces of the media's coverage?
We got to get our resumes polished, Mark, for a crowd management consultant. Well, this is an important thing. If you're going to put on an event with many thousands of people, managing those people safely is incumbent upon you if you're the organizer. So I guess those folks, yacht dealers, are going to be the benefit of some good sales coming up.
So tell me, in this instance, what is Mr. Scott's specific liability?
Well, that's a complicated question, Mark. It's confounded by a couple things. Number one is he seems to have a history, a public history through Twitter and social media of encouraging people to violate the safety precautions that have been established at his shows, encouraging people to jump on the stage, encouraging people to jump over barriers. And it remains to be seen whether he did so on the night in question in ways that, basically helped further the carnage. We know that he didn't stop the show amid pleas to stop the show. Now, what we don't yet know, Mark, is if he processed those as pleas to stop the show. You can imagine if you're on stage in front of so many dozens and dozens of thousands of people, and some small universe of those people are screaming at you to do one thing, whether you're processing it as that thing, we just don't know. Perhaps he did. There are likely to be statements that he made to other people as he got off the stage that, are going to come out in court, and we'll learn about that. And if he did at the time know that there was, all these emergency incidents happening and he didn't do anything about it, well, then I think the liability would definitely apply. But all that's going to have to wait. We're going to be, for better or worse, talking about this for years to come, I think, because of all the legal action that will result.
And the world of concert going will change, and we'll all be at home in the metaverse watching things online. Scott D. Cosenza, thank you ever so much.
Thanks, Mark.
And that's about it for this week on Liberty Nation Radio. I want to thank our guest, the illustrious Cal Thomas, the fount of knowledge in all things political, Tim Donner, and of course our constitutional connoisseur, Scott Cosenza. And most of all, as always, my sincerest thanks to you, the listener, for being here. A final thought before we part. As Margaret Oliphant wrote in the Rector in 1863, he was highly spoken of, everybody knew, but nobody knew who had spoken highly of him. If that reminds you of the current president, it's because as the weeks and months pass, Joe Biden appears more a confection of media myths added to his own muddled personal history. Is it any wonder the American people have decided it's high time for a change? Thanks for listening. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Who are we? We are Americans that believe in liberty. We are a project of the nonprofit One Generation Away. We are patriots who apply the founding principles to the issues of today.
And they keep moving the goalposts on us.
We are educators and commentators who love America and the Constitution. Who are we? We are Liberty Nation.